Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to revisit a brewery that you have seen me review a good couple of things from before. These guys are well known as being one of the iconic New England IPA breweries, and I first encountered these guys around 2 years ago when my parents brought me back a mixed six-pack from them when they were in Boston. So for this review then we are going to return to Trillium Brewing Company, who are from Boston in Massachusetts, and we're going to have a look at the double dry hopped version of their Melcher Street New England IPA, which comes in at 7.2% ABV. Now this beer was very kindly given to me by Chris Contreras, an American guy living in Belgium who has sent me some absolutely ridiculous beers over the last little while. He sent me this one along with a good number of other Treehouse beers and things like that too. So you will have already seen some of the Treehouse beers at the point that this video publishes. There is one more to come from Trillium, and he also sent me a beer from Aslan in Virginia and the Black Project in Denver and Colorado as well. So a huge thank you to him for making this review possible. It will be really cool to return to this brewery again after like 18 months, 2 years, whatever it's actually been, because obviously your palate is always evolving when it comes to drinking craft beer. You're always trying new things, and it will be kind of interesting as well just to see how this beer compares to some of the European ones that I've been having recently in the New England IPA style. So yeah, huge thank you to Chris for making this review possible, and as always I hope that you guys watching the channel enjoy it. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Trillium Brewing Company before. You will see one more in the fairly near future, and beyond that I hope that I can continue to add to that list regularly. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the American beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Trillium Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Trillium Brewing Company opened back in March of 2013, and it was founded by JC and Esther Tetro, if I'm pronouncing their name correctly. It looks like a French name, and it's been ages since I did French at school. But apparently Esther and JC just started out brewing beers as a way to celebrate their marriage, and they enjoyed it, so they continued to do it. And then eventually they decided to turn professional, as many home brewers do. But the brewery were originally based in the Fort Point area in South Boston, and they had only a 10-barrel brewing system there, but this has since been upgraded to a 250 BBL system. They also have a secondary facility at Canton, which opened up in December of 2015. This has 16,000 square feet of floor space, and it brews 35,000 BBLs annually, so that is their main brewing facility for the moment. In 2016 though, the brewery also began canning their beers, and they said at this point that the main challenge for them was just to manage their growth, because they didn't want to grow ridiculously fast but wanted to kind of maintain a lot of the stuff that they'd achieved so far. But they have done that fairly successfully over the last few years. Their beers are still very highly sought after, and quite often you'll get large queues outside of both breweries just trying to pick up the different things that they do. They now have another location in Fenway on Park Drive, which is very close to the home of the Boston Red Sox. Right enough, this is just another tap room, and since 2017 they've been opening up the Trillium Garden every summer as well, which is the location of this seems to change. So if you are in Boston over the summer, you do need to just have a little look and see where this is if you're interested to try some of the Trillium beers. But probably when I go to New England next year, I will go to one of their main locations, probably the one at Canton I would think, since that is the kind of main brewery. But I guess checking out the original one would be quite nice as well. But if you do get the chance to visit Boston, I was there back in like 2010. Something like that. It's a very pretty city, lots of history there, the American Civil War and the Revolution of course as well, the things like the Boston Tea Party from the 1770s, and the stuff from I think there's quite a bit of stuff from the American Civil War as well, although most of the events took place a little bit further south in the likes of Virginia and Kentucky and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, a really historic city, very pretty. When I go there I always think it looks a lot like, there's a lot of things there that remind you of Dublin, because there was a big Irish population up there. So it's definitely worth looking at as well. Another interesting point about this brewery is that they're currently looking to open up their own farm as well. They're looking to have a little farmhouse brewery down there and produce different ingredients and stuff to use in their beer too. They haven't announced too much about that yet from what I understand, but they are working on that, and I think probably it looks like it will open up next summer or a little bit beyond that as well. So yeah, like I said, these guys are one of the iconic New England IPA breweries. Along with the likes of Alchemist, Hill Farmstead, Treehouse as well, who you've seen me review recently. So if you find yourself in Boston, go and check out Treehouse and also check out these guys as well. Alchemist and Hill Farmstead are both New Hampshire. I think one of them is Vermont and one of them is New Hampshire, I think. I think perhaps Alchemist is in Vermont and Hill Farmstead is away in New Hampshire somewhere. But definitely, all four of those breweries are the kind of iconic New England IPA breweries these days. But there's a good few other ones opening up in New York and down near Washington and stuff like that as well these days. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Trillium Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. There's different feeds for the different bars and stuff like that, of course, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So this one is a 7.2% New England IPA. It's hopped with Mosaic and Columbus, guessing that Mosaic will be the hop used in the dry hopping and Columbus will be the main kind of bittering hop in this one. But it's got a malt base of American two-row barley and white wheat and also some C15 malts along with some dextrose and dextrin sugars in it as well. So it should be really quite interesting actually. Like I said, I'm really curious to see how this beer turns out, having reviewed their stuff about 2 years ago now. So hopefully this is another good one. But there you can see, there is the artwork on this. It's the kind of typical minimalist thing that you'll find on a lot of these New England IPAs. A lot of the European breweries, incidentally, are copying this, and I think the fact that these cans are sold, this is one American pint, which is 473 millilitres. A lot of the European breweries sell their New England IPAs in 440s, which is obviously just, to kind of copy the Americans a little bit, although I always complain that they're not 500 millilitres, half litres, because that makes more sense. I always say this when I review American beers. The American measurement system makes absolutely no sense. The metric system is based on water. Just use it, the universal solvent. But yeah, you can see here, it points out on the map Melcher Street, and I think, if I remember rightly from looking at the map, I think one of the Trillium brewery place is actually up in here somewhere. So they, as I say, this is part of their street series, and they name their beers after different streets around their different facilities. So yeah, 473 mils this one, it's 7.2%, the double dry hop version of the Melcher Street New England IPA. So let's get it out and we will get on with the tasting then. Once again, a huge thank you to Chris Contreras for making this review possible. And I'll tell you straight away, as soon as you open this beer up, you get those lovely tangerine, orangey notes from that Mosaic hop. Smells absolutely lovely. So when it comes to dry hopping, again, for me it's like barrel aging. To be honest, I do wonder if I'm a little bit more of a naturalist when it comes to craft beer. I've had a good few dry hopped beers and I always find they come across as very green and very almost dusty in their flavours, and I'm a bit unsure of whether I prefer that to the original ones. And I've said the same with barrel aging when it comes to imperial stouts and stuff like this. So I'm curious to see how this one turns out. I've not tried the original Melcher Street, of course, but we'll see how we get on with this beer. And it's always interesting to talk about that too, because as I say, the double dry hop versions of beers, to me they come across as very dusty and very thick, just because of the hops that are added once you're letting the fermentation take place as well. So yeah, as you can see with this beer, this one's poured a really quite bright yellowy orange colour. This one, it's definitely got that nice big thick murky type thing that you would expect of the New England IPAs. There was about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say creamy coloured head on this one, although in fairness it has faded away just to be a very thin foamy layer. But yeah, I would say it was a kind of more creamy coloured head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. You can see a few little things creeping up towards the bottom of that head there, but overall it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. It's pretty much what you would expect from a New England IPA, so nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. So let's just have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Yeah, you can tell straight away with this beer, that kind of dusty note that comes out of it That's the obvious kind of giveaway that it's a double dry hop thing, apart from the fact that it says it on the can. So yeah, it's the green side of the hops, I think, that come out of this beer straight away. And I've always found with the New England IPAs, it's a bit silly to drink them absolutely fresh because they just come across as very green and burny almost. So I think you're always better to let these guys age for maybe like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, something like that, and just let the kind of greenness die back to a good point so that it just comes across as nice and floral. But straight away with this one, you can smell that big floral aromaticity that you would expect of Mosaic. I'm sure Mosaic is like a sort of, it's about 14 or 15% alpha acid. It's a big beast, but you can also smell a teeny little bit of earthiness out of this one as well. And that's one of the complexities that you will get from Mosaic as well. But when you've got Columbus in there as the bittering hop, that's also going to give you some of that earthiness and some of that nice big floral aromatic spice as well. Columbus is quite distinctive in terms of its spiciness. It almost comes across as like slightly peppery and floral at the same time from what I remember. There's a little bit of grassiness in there as well, but pardon me, I think it's definitely fair to say with this beer that you know, it really is leaning more towards that kind of floral side of things rather than being more grassy and stuff. On the fruity side of things, it's really quite sharp actually. There's a good little bit of a kind of I want to say there's a good little bit of an almost lemony zest to this one, to be honest with you. If I was blind smelling this, I might guess there was a little bit of Centennial in there or something like that. But yeah, it's got a lovely kind of tangerine orangey note in there. There's a little bit of an almost kind of pineapple-y, peachy type quality as well. Maybe it's more peaches rather than lemons that I'm smelling actually out of this. It's definitely got a little bit of that sharp kind of tropical note to it as well. But once you take in the aroma a bit more deeply, I really think that this beer leans towards a sort of juicy tangerine note actually. But that works out really well with it, I have to say. I mean, the aroma of this beer is beautiful. I'd be curious to try this one in comparison to the original Melcher Street. Like I say, I'm still a little bit kind of divided on whether I prefer double dry hopping or whether I like the beers a bit more natural right enough. And obviously it is going to affect the flavour a little bit, and more kind of fruity juiciness is always good. But I think it would be interesting from a sort of scientific perspective to make some comparisons. But yeah, the juicy fruitiness in this one is lovely. This beer will tick a few boxes for me. I love the more orangey IPAs, but this is it really is very nice. The malt base, I think, takes a bit of a back seat in this one, probably because of the amount of hops that are in this beer. But you can smell a nice little bit of a smooth kind of white bready sort of thing. The wheatiness is really giving you that white bready quality in there, and you can smell a little bit of a kind of oaty creaminess in there, which is probably the dextrose and the dextrin sugars. It didn't say on the website with this beer whether they had actually used oats in it, but I know that oats seem to be changed a little bit with dextrose and dextrin these days. So this one doesn't come across quite as creamy as some other New England IPAs that I've come across. It's more kind of smooth and bready in its malt base, I think, but you will get a little bit of the creaminess too. You might also find a little bit of a biscuity sweetness to the malt base here as well. Yeah, definitely, if you take it in a bit more deeply, there is a little bit of that kind of biscuity quality that you can expect from this beer style as well. But overall, the aroma comes across really, really quite nicely. You can tell from the amount of hoppy activity in this one that this beer is quite active, I have to say. You can really smell that about this beer. But as I always say, take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. This one is the double dry hop version of Melcher Street, a New England IPA. It's 7.2% from Trillium Brewing Company in Boston, Massachusetts, over in America. A huge thank you again to Chris for making this review possible, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the video. Let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål. Yeah, that's really nice actually. I really like how this goes together. You know, if I compare this to some of the breweries that I've had recently, this reminds me quite a lot of some of the Gamma brewing beers from over in Copenhagen in Denmark. It really does just remind me of those. I can see where they're taking their inspiration actually, and it's kind of cool. I mean, I've had some Russian New England IPAs recently, and their beers taste a lot like some of the Treehouse things. Jagovor Brewery in Moscow, Stam Brewing from Moscow as well. You know, it's kind of interesting just to see. You get, I think the Trillium beers are a little bit more kind of punchy and in your face, if you like, than the Treehouse ones. I find the Treehouse ones very smooth and juicy and drinkable. The Trillium ones, from what I remember, are just that little bit more punchy, I think. So it's really interesting that you get two ends of the one horseshoe, if you like. It's really interesting to try these beers, and I mean, it's cool. I think by the when I reviewed these beers before, probably I'd only tried one or two of the early Gamma Brewing beers. I think they were doing West Coast IPAs back then. So it's cool to, you know, have that perspective now where I've tried some of the New England IPAs. Amar Brewhus over in Copenhagen as well are doing some really interesting stuff. For those of you watching in America, of course, I live in Skåne, the very south of Sweden, so very close to Copenhagen. So I'm very lucky that I can get the Swedish beers and the Danish ones very easily. But this really reminds me of some of these beers I've had from Gamma Brewing quite recently. This is really nice. So yeah, the other thing I would say about this as well is that the double dry hopped beers that I've had, or just the dry hop beers generally, that I've had from different New England breweries. This one actually comes across as a little bit more natural, if that makes sense. And it could be the fact that this beer is just, you know, a few weeks old, because Chris has brought it back from America and then he sent it from Belgium to me here. So maybe the fact is this beer's just sort of relaxed and mellowed out a little bit. That's maybe one of the reasons why it doesn't feel quite as dusty, because I reviewed the beer. It was a collaboration between Lervig and Amundsen recently, and that was like the most dry hopped beer in Scandinavia, and that came across as very, very dusty. It was like 80 grams per litre or something like that they had dry hopped that beer to. It was insane. But this one comes across as a little bit more sort of natural, if that makes sense. I think they've got the dry hopping just to quite a nice level of this, so thumbs up to Trillium Brewing here. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer then. So in the middle of your palate, you're going to feel that nice white bready, wheaty quality there. That just blankets the middle of the tongue. You're also going to notice that the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, you do start to get there's almost like a little bit of an earthiness pushes its way out of the malt base of this beer, which is quite interesting. I mean, when I tried Heady Topper, the Alchemist beer, the thing that really struck me about that was it was really quite rustic and sort of farmhousey, and I didn't expect that from it. This beer really has, it has a little bit of that. It really, and obviously they'll be using house yeasts and things like that. This beer, it does have a little bit of that earthiness, but this is definitely more, this one is a lot more like what we would get in Europe, to be honest with you. The Treehouse ones were very, very kind of light and smooth, if that makes sense. This one is that little bit more punchy, and I think that's the thing that runs through the Trillium beers actually. So this one, to me, it does have a little bit of that sort of almost earthy quality you'd expect from a farmhouse beer, because from what I understand, the New England IPAs did start out as farmhouse beers. So yeah, you will detect a little bit of earthiness in the middle of your palate as well with this one, I think. Particularly in the aftertaste. But yeah, the further you go into the flavour of this one, you really do pick out that the pungency of the wheat pushes its way out a little bit more as well, and it almost becomes a little bit citrusy, to be honest with you. The middle of your palate, though, starts to sweeten up a little bit, and that's probably the dextrose and the dextrin that are doing that, because they give you, they don't quite give you the creaminess of oats, but they do give you the sort of sweetness and smoothness that you would expect of them generally. But in the very centre of your palate, you've seen how long it was since I took a sip of this now, it starts to get a little bit more kind of biscuity, to be honest with you as well, which is interesting. So I really like how that whole part of the malt base goes together. This one, as I say, really reminds me of Gamma Brewing from over in Copenhagen, and Dry and Bitter Brewery as well. It's kind of like that. I like this malt base, so thumbs up to Trillium Brewing Company for this one. Yeah, I do like that. In terms of the hoppy side of this beer then, and this I think is where it gets quite interesting. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of earthiness there. Now, what I suspect is going on with this beer, they said there's Columbus and Mosaic with this one, so Columbus will probably have been used as the bittering hop for this beer. the mosaic will have been added later on in the brew, because when you want the big bitterness out of the beer, you add the hops pretty much right away when you get the beer up, the wort rather, up to boiling point, and that gives you a lot of your bitterness. If you add hops later on in the brew, what you see is like a kind of trade-off between bitterness in terms of aroma and flavour. So the bitterness goes down and the aroma and flavour profile goes up. That's probably what they're doing with this one. They'll be adding the mosaic after, you know, for the sort of last half hour, as well as doing the dry hopping. And this beer actually does have a good level of bitterness to it, but some of the earthiness you'll get in this beer is from the Columbus, I would think, and also a bit from the mosaic. But as you come further forward along the sides of the palate, you get that nice, quite distinct spiciness that you would expect of Columbus. And then round the very front curve of the palate, it gets a little bit lighter and grassy. But I would say the grassiness does have a little bit more bite to it, which is probably due to the fact that it's dry hopped rather than just being a kind of pure hop extract beer, if it's right to say that. You know, all these flavours being extracted from the hops rather than the dry hopping later on. But yeah, I do like how that goes together. It's a beer that's got a good bit of punch to it, but it still remains really quite drinkable actually. And behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get the nice oily bubble, where the juicy fruity esters start to roll their way out of the beer. And for me, this one, it really does lean towards that kind of orangey, tangerine note. If you go to the back of that oily part of your tongue, it's orangey and tangerine, but then as you come further forward, it almost has a little bit of a kind of peachy sharpness to it. There's a little bit of a kind of pineapple-y note to the beer as well, but yeah, to me mainly it's orangey, peachy, and sort of pineapple-y, this one too. Maybe a bit of papaya or something like that. The further you go into the aftertaste, the flavour does evolve a little bit and becomes a little bit more kind of papaya, mango-y in terms of its profile. But overall, this is a really quite nice beer, this, and compared to some of the other double dry hopped New England IPAs I've had, it does come across as just a little bit less dusty, if that makes sense. And I think that's what really strikes a chord with me on this one. That's one of the reservations I've always had about double dry hopping the beers a little bit, but yeah, it works out really quite nicely, this one. And it's interesting as well that they don't really use oats in the malt bases over here. One of the first sort of New England type beers that I encountered in Sweden was the Fata Morgana from Omnipollo, which they just put oats in the malt base, and it worked really well. I think this was before the New England IPAs really started to kick off. But it's cool to try beers from different breweries when they do it in different ways. Some breweries use oats, some breweries use the dextrose and the dextrin to do the same job. Cloudwater in England use the dextrose and dextrin, from what I understand, whereas, you know, like Day, I think, use the oats. So yeah, a really interesting beer, this one, in terms of its flavour profile. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that again, and I think for a double dry hopped New England IPA, it does its job really quite well. It's got a nice smoothness to it, this beer. So on that note, let's talk about the mouthfeel of this beer then. So definitely a mid-bodied beer. I don't think there's any debate about that really. Yeah, mid-bodied. Carbonation's very smooth in this one. The mouthfeel comes across as kind of oily, but at the same time it's quite wet. I'd say it's more of a wet feeling New England IPA, this one. This is definitely not one of the creamier ones that you're going to come across, but it does have that quite pungent flavour profile that makes up for it. In terms of the hoppy bitterness, I think this beer is about 40 or maybe, I think probably 50 IBUs, to be honest with you. This one is definitely not just 30. I think it's a bit more than that, and that's probably due to the Columbus. The Columbus is a good bittering hop. So if you like your New England IPAs to have a bit more kick to them, this is one that you definitely want to try. A good little bit of a hoppy bitterness to the beer. The malt base is very smooth. It's got a little bit of that wheaty pungency. That lingers into the aftertaste. You get that almost slightly citrusy character from the malt base in the middle of your tongue. The fruity side of things is quite nice, nice juicy orangey tangerine notes, and you've also got that kind of grassy quality lingering there as well. So overall, a really, really nice kind of take on the New England IPA, this one, and like I said, definitely cool to return to this beer, this brewery rather, after about 2 years, and it really does remind me of like Gamma and Dry and Bitter over in Copenhagen. Those are probably the two closest breweries you're going to find in Europe to this, but then again, there's a lot of craft beer in Europe that I've not tried yet, so bear that in mind. The Danish ones I know are fairly widely distributed, so if you've tried Gamma and Dry and Bitter, this one is quite similar to that actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this. This is a really nice New England IPA, but you know, the stuff that Chris has sent me, I'm not surprised that he sent me another awesome beer. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this one. Definitely cool to return to this brewery after about 2 years. So you know, I'm hopeful that I can get out there in August in 2020 and take a look at their brewery and do a few on-site tastings and stuff like this as well. But thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Trillium Brewing as well, and I'm sure I'll return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. It's been awesome to review this one for you. Big thank you to Chris for making it possible, and I will catch you guys very soon. Make sure you check out my social media, and if you have the chance, make sure you try some of the Trillium Brewing Company beers. This is the double dry hop version of the Melcher Street, a New England IPA at 7.2% from Trillium Brewing Company in Boston in Massachusetts in America. Until the next time, Slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, cheers.